I'm not sure how to see if the record. Okay, there we go. It's recording. All right, we can go ahead and start now. Welcome everyone to our Success in a Virtual Environment event with AT&T. We have some wonderful members with us here today, and I'll just be handing it off to them to start off.
All right, well, welcome everyone. I'm Sue B. and Kerry, and I'm so delighted to be back with you again. And I've actually, as I always do, have brought my friends, and every single one of the friends that I have with me here today, and they'll each be introducing themselves, has actually been there with you in present multiple times in the past. And they were so excited to have this virtual opportunity because we're all a little sad that we're not being able to actually be there with you in the TI auditorium eating pizza as we normally would. So with that, let's get started. Today, what we're going to be talking about is success in a virtual environment. And there are actually three different contexts for this. One is your classes. That's what all of you are struggling through right now. And that has its own set of frustration. But hopefully that's going to lead to job interviews. So how are you successful in a virtual job interview? And then the ultimate goal is that you'll be working someplace. And how are you going to be successful in the new work environment where you may not be able to have access to all the face-to-face mentoring that you might have normally gotten? Your supervisor may be working remotely, so that's, that causes a little frustration because here you are as a new employee and now you can't run over to their desk with a quick question because they're not at their desk. So those are some of the things that we're going to talk through today. And we have Will Brown as the lead recruiting manager at AT&T, and Susie Dorsey and Amanda Posadas and Eric Horst. And they'll each be introducing themselves, but they're going to be giving their perspectives on those three issues. So with that, let's meet our panelists so they can reintroduce themselves to you. And let's start with Will.
Hey, Will, you're on mute.
You're on mute.
Hey, everyone. Will Brown, lead college recruiting manager here at AT&T. And in this role, my responsibilities are to attract top talent across our technology and business development programs here at AT&T. So I lead our recruiting efforts at UT Dallas. So I'm sure you guys seen me in a few sweet workshops in the past and then on campus. But I've been with AT&T 14 years. So I started going through our business-to-business sales program, enterprise sales, moved into a project management role, and now I'm in human resources. So very happy to be here with you today.
Very good. Thanks, Will. And now let's move to Susie Dorsey.
Hey everyone, I'm Susie. I've been with AT&T just over 3 years now. I started as an intern when I was in college, and then right after I graduated, I joined our technical development program, which is a rotational program. So I got to have a couple different roles in a short period of time and get exposed to a few different areas of the business. I'm currently in my third role. This is my first role outside of the program, and I am on the Consumer Field Operations Chief of Staff team. Pretty much that's staff support for our officer who leads consumer field operations, which is pretty much the technicians who go into your home to do installs, repairs, things like that. So it's been a fun ride so far.
All right, thanks, Susie. And let's move on to Amanda.
Hey everyone, I'm Amanda Posadas. I've been with AT&T since 2013. I joined the Technology Development Program. There I was a systems engineer, requirements engineer, moved on to business analyst, and now that I am in FlexForce, I am I guess you call it a program manager. I lead some of the programs for our entire organization. I'm also on their chief of staff team and part of the communications lead.
Very good. Thanks, Amanda. And we have Eric.
Yeah, I'm Eric. I am an application developer for FlexForce. I basically do internal consulting for AT&T, so I get sent off to do different projects for whichever team needs development resources. At the moment, I'm the lead developer for two separate teams, which means that I don't just do development anymore. I do a lot of managing and handling the business, interacting with a large variety of people who are both technical and non-technical, and making sure that everything kind of clicks together and that we fulfill the client's vision to the best of our ability as quickly as possible.
That was great. Thanks, Eric. And for the students, I just wanted to let you know these are important things to recognize as you start to go to your upcoming virtual career fairs and you have the opportunity to interact with other companies. One of the things that our three panelists talked about here were rotational programs. So the technical development program is the AT&T rotational program. And if you go on AT&T.jobs, you're going to see that come up, and it's 3 years. You get 3 separate assignments. And then when that is over, you get to decide what you want to do. And so Susie Dorsey indicated that she just graduated from that 3-year rotational program. During that time, she figured out what she liked and what she didn't like, and then she got a job in her current field, as she described, being on the field chief of staff team. So, and she's been in that role, and now that doesn't mean she stays there for the rest of her life. That means that that's her role at AT&T. People change jobs pretty frequently, so Susie's actually, ready to start looking at, all right, I've been doing this for a while. What am I going to be doing next? Amanda and Eric, based on that TDP experience, they decided like, wow, I really love the opportunity to work on different things and constantly have changes and be working with different people on different programs. And they decided to join a group called FlexForce. And Eric described it exactly. It is an internal AT&T consulting group. So you work on a wide variety of things with a wide variety of clients, and clients usually internal to AT&T, and it's just a lot of fun because you learn about a bunch of different groups. And actually, one of the strongest members of the team that I have now was he did TDP and he did FlexForce, and my team was one of his clients. And through that FlexForce experience, he decided that he liked our group so much that he left FlexForce and joined our team permanently. So I just mentioned that to you because a lot of times students, when they see things on the website, they don't really know what that is. And then you also want to be asking about rotational programs because it gives you a lot of flexibility, and that is something that AT&T has. And then I also wanted to mention that just as a way to calm your nerves, because a lot of time for those of you that are seniors and you're looking at permanent jobs and you're thinking like, wow, I've spent the last 4 years just taking engineering classes. I don't really know what's out there. Like, what should I be doing the rest of my life? And I just wanted to tell you, you don't have to worry about that. Just pick a good company, and if you're not certain, find one with a rotational program. And then over the next couple of years, you can continue to discern what things you like and what things you don't like. So don't have stress and pressure thinking that you need to make a decision now over what you're going to do for the rest of your life. So thanks, panelists, for that introduction. And now let's move to our next slide. So tips for virtual presentations. And I am going to start off with Will. Now, these apply to both your professors this semester are going to be asking you to make presentations virtually. So it has an immediate application. But for some of you, you're also going to need to do this for your job interviews. And you're also going to need to keep this in mind for the future. So let's start to talk about just general communication tips. What are things that are going to make you successful in the virtual world? And let's start with Will Brown.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Sue. So team, as in my role as a college recruiting manager, I'm going to talk to one of these bullet points and open up to the rest of the team, and just kind of give you a best practice as a recruiting manager. What I do is a lot of presentations, right? Typically, I'm in front of lots of auditoriums or in career fairs, classrooms, but in a virtual environment, I'm using technology like Zoom, WebEx. And so one thing that I have to do all the time is do an audio check before my meeting begins to ensure that everyone can hear me, and that I'm communicating effectively. As you're interviewing with recruiters and hiring managers or speaking to professors, how you come across really starts to give people insight into your personal brand. Are you prepared? Are you familiar with technology? Especially if you're interviewing with a technology company, you really want to show that you're a subject matter expert on whatever platform, whether it be Handshake, and a lot of you guys are going to be virtual career fairs and Handshake, whether it's WebEx or Zoom. Come prepared, check your audio so that you're communicating effectively and people understand, your viewpoints, and that you come across as someone who's ready for that role. And with that, Sue, I'll turn it back over to you and the team.
Yeah, all right, let's go to our panelists. So Susie, let's start with you.
Yeah, so one part of my job and one thing I really enjoy is oftentimes I have to set up meetings and agendas and whatnot and run them for vice presidents and officers of the company. So it's a cool experience as such a low-level manager to get that kind of exposure. But at the same time, everyone's time, especially at that level, is so valuable. So one thing that I try to do in my virtual meetings is come as prepared as possible. So I try to have the presentation or whatever slides or material we're sharing up and running in the background. So when it's my turn to present, I can just start sharing my screen and it's already up. I don't have to go digging through all the files and looking for it. If I think the conversation might be taken in a certain direction and I know there's material to support it or additional data, I'll try to have that up and running as well. And it just kind of eases my nerves as well, just knowing that everything that I could possibly need is right there, because no one likes being panicked when you're, going through your files, trying to share your screen, especially in front of high-ranking individuals at AT&T. So that's just something I try to do to make our meetings run as efficiently as possible.
That's great. Thanks, Susie. And let's go to you, Amanda.
Definitely, yes. So I agree with Susie. Want to make sure you're as professional as possible. I like getting on calls early, just like this one today, making sure my audio worked. In fact, it didn't work earlier, so I had to switch headsets, and that worked out. And normal voice is really good. You have folks that maybe their hair is rustling, or they're too close to the mic or too far away or turn their heads. That's a problem that I noticed. And I'm actually going to be hosting a call this afternoon with our organization. So I usually try to keep my mic muted when I'm not on calls, and I actually have the ability to mute others' mics just so that everyone gets that time that they deserve without interruption.
Very good. Amanda and Eric.
I think that something that's really important and can't honestly be overstated is how much being prepared really does change the dynamic. But being prepared, I think for Susie and for Amanda, it's important that they have their slides and everything together. But even like on a small scale, when I'm dealing with my teams, I like to be prepared just by having like Notepad open with like a very informal agenda, or if we're doing stand up, I keep a Kanban board up. You want to have those visual aids to help keep people engaged and focused on the topics that are at hand, the things that you're actually trying to deal with at the time. Because with virtual meetings, there are so many opportunities to get out and go do other things that that it can be very distracting if you don't have something that kind of pulls them back in. So supporting, it's not always just your presentations. And then I think the other thing that's super important is if you are going to be presenting something like that, to make sure that anything that doesn't need to be presented, for example, like a chat that you use to communicate with your team, or perhaps, if you use like Slack or Discord or something, like you want to make sure that those are closed and that they're not going to like pop up in the middle of your meeting. And then same with making sure that you're not changing your screen. Like this is something that a lot of presentation systems will do. Like if you change from one thing to another, say I'm showing a PowerPoint, then I go and I look at my email. When the email comes up, the PowerPoint disappears for everybody who's looking at it. So you just want to make sure that you don't share in a way where that happens, or that you're as prepared as possible for that eventuality, so that you can minimize the amount of time that people are looking at a blank screen or maybe not looking at what you want them to.
Very good. Really good advice. Thanks, Eric. So let's move on for specific. That was general communication tips. Now let's talk specifically about tips for virtual study. And we're going to go straight to our panelists here. And I'll start with you. Will, anything that you want to add right off the bat?
Yeah, I would add that a lot of corporations have what we call, learning organizations, and AT&T has an AT&T University, where we have certified instructors, trainers, programmers that can train you on, soft skills such as public speaking, business writing, all the way to data analytics. So if you want to go get a nano degree or a master's degree, we have, instructor-led courses you could take, or we have, agreements with institutions across the United States where we'll fund an online degree program. So as you guys are looking for employers, continuous education is very important. You want to make sure you're having a company that's invested into your development, and AT&T has that through our AT&T University, and there's partner relationships with universities across the country. So that's the first thing that comes to mind. So I just encourage you guys to, ask those questions of their employers as you guys are interviewing, because that's super, super important. Continuous education is very important.
Yep. Thank you, Will. And again, going back to, you're going to be going to virtual career fairs, you're jotting down questions that you're going to be asking. So Will mentioned our AT&T University. So that's how we get our internal certifications. Or let's say for Amanda or Eric, they're in Flexforce and a client is doing something in Java and you've never been exposed to Java. So you could go to AT&T University and actually take a Java class. So it's just fabulous for certification. In the team I'm in right now, almost all of my employees are certified program management professionals, and they were able to do that through T University. Will also mentioned online master's degrees, so that's incredible. AT&T was a pioneer in this area, but it's something you want to ask about, because these are programs that AT&T has coordinated with universities like Notre Dame or Georgia Tech or OU. So big name, well-known schools. And what you do is AT&T pays the tuition, so there's no out of pocket, and you are able to spend, it's a very well-organized program. You start with a group and you end with a group, and it lasts typically 2 or 3 years. So there's those online master's programs. And then there's also, which is more common, which is probably what you're going to be talking to most companies about, traditional tuition reimbursement, where the company gives you a certain number of dollars every year, and you can use it however you'd like. So you can get an MBA. Susie Dorsey is engaged in one of those programs at Auburn that she'll talk to you about right now. But you could do anything you want. For example, if you started at AT&T, you could go back and get your master's at UTD using the traditional tuition reimbursement. So just something to keep in mind as you're getting ready for those career fairs. And with that, let's go to you, Susie, for your 2 cents.
Yeah, definitely. So one thing that I really wanted to take advantage of when I came to AT&T, and this was a big draw of me starting to work here, is I wanted an MBA. I have a mechanical engineering undergrad degree. I've never taken a business class in my life, and I wanted to obviously take business classes because I want to have a career where I'm managing a larger part of the business at some point, and I want to be able to make those business decisions. So with AT&T, it's fantastic. They reimburse me after every semester, and I'll be able to get my MBA for a very, very affordable price. I love it. It's all online. Like Sue mentioned, it's through Auburn University. And I guess if I could give any tips for just being in that virtual study environment, it was definitely a rude awakening for me at first, since I've never taken online classes before. Everything's always been in person, so I'm sure you guys are getting used to that adjustment right now as well. But if I could give you anything, just learn from my mistakes, if nothing else, I would say try to stick to a schedule. If you can, block out an hour at lunch or, a certain amount of time every day, and you can just kind of work through your classes, get through your videos, work on your problems a little bit at a time. It'll be so much more meaningful and a lot less stressful as opposed to just waiting for the deadline. Like, honestly, I didn't take my own advice this past weekend. I had an assignment due Sunday. I decided to go to the lake instead, and then I watched my videos on double time and sat on the couch and cranked through the assignment last second. It was a terrible experience. So honestly, had I just blocked out 2 lunch hours in the previous week, I could have avoided that entirely. So that would be one thing. Another thing is, just because you're in that virtual environment doesn't mean you're on an island by yourself. You still have peers in the class, and your professor will likely be very accessible as well. So just utilize technology, get on those Zoom calls, turn your cameras on, and it's kind of the next best thing to being face to face. You can still leverage the knowledge of your peers and work together on projects and studying and whatnot. And then the last thing, and I'm so bad about this as well, just create an environment that's conducive to studying. So whether that means you're sitting outside at a table at Starbucks, whatever helps you focus. I cannot recommend this enough. Do not watch videos in your bed or laying on your couch, because I've done that and I fall asleep every time, and it's just a terrible use of time because then you have to go rewatch the videos. So honestly, just sitting upright at a table, anything like that will help you focus, and you'll save time in the long run.
Excellent advice, Susie. Excellent. All right, let's move to you, Amanda.
So first, I haven't had the opportunity to, take an online class or a nano degree that we have at AT&T, but I have been in study groups, and those were all virtual. Most of our team is spread across the country, and I'd have to agree. Staying organized, making sure that you make the time, because usually you're doing this on top of your classes or on top of your actual work. If you are in the workforce. And really, we have the opportunity to, reach out to your peers. So just like, if you need help, you know somebody, you might know somebody who's really good in that area. So, make those connections, study with your peers. We have a little, we have the ability to group chat or have our own, whenever we have a question, we can, shoot it to our friends, our coworkers, and, work together. And I guess my biggest tip is, like, take these things that you're learning now and what you're going to be learning throughout the school year, because you're going to need them when you enter the workforce. Most, at least tech companies, they're really big on, continuous learning, either if you do go off and earn, a master's or another additional degree, or if you take, just most places have internal training that you can take. And it really comes in handy if you can really cement these skills now, versus trying to learn them later on when you're swamped with everything.
Yep, that's great advice, Amanda. And Eric, what is your guidance?
I really recommend, the fact that like you have the unique opportunity when you're dealing with when you're dealing with virtual learning, that a lot of the videos, a lot of the lessons that your teachers prepare end up being recorded and then accessible at a later time, which is something that you obviously don't have when you're in like an in-person lecture, right? You can't go back and hear exactly what your professor said 2 or 3 or 4 times. So I would definitely take advantage of that opportunity to go back and rewatch a video. If you don't understand something, or if you kind of want to make sure that you understand it in the way that your professor's teaching, then you have the resources to do that most often in a virtual environment, which is a very unique experience. So I would definitely recommend being aware of that. But at the same time, I do think that it's really important. The other two have already mentioned, and I have to agree, it's super important to communicate with your peers. So when I was doing my virtual learning, I was in group chats, and we were using at the time like AOL Instant Messenger or something like that, and we just had like a group chat for each class. But times have changed. There are other tools now, which is great. But I would still recommend like going and making a group chat and grouping it with the class, and then inviting the class to it, right? And it helps on many levels, because if you're that person who's proactive enough to go and do it and get the class involved, then you have a lot more resources. People definitely will trust that you'll be there when they need help, but you'll also have people who are there when you need help. So we definitely recommend that. However that manifests itself, I think it goes beyond having a Zoom call or having a meeting. I think that those kinds of study sessions can definitely be helpful, but the important thing is just being able to communicate all the time. When you're in a virtual environment, just having that open line of communication to your peers is going to be hugely helpful, because that's exactly how work works. I'm never working in a bubble. I'm always working with other people. And AT&T offers us a lot of communication tools, and I'm sure that other businesses do as well. So you might just want to, think about applying that to your schooling, especially now that you're in a virtual environment, and you have that opportunity.
Yeah, that's great advice, Eric. And one of the important things that Eric said that is kind of tied to what Amanda and Susie said is setting up those meetings adds structure to your day, not only for you, but for your peers. And that structure is helpful because, to Susie's point, if you were going to study during lunchtime and it was just you alone, when lunchtime comes, you may be like, I just want to watch this video, or I want to, chat with a friend. But really the best thing for you is to just spend an hour on whatever your homework assignment is and get a good start on it. To Eric's point, if you had set up a group chat for noon when a group of people were going to study together, that's like natural enforcement. That then forces you to spend that time studying, which was your original intent. So let's go on to our final topic, and that is virtual interview tips. And we are lucky enough today to have Mr. Will Brown, who is actually the one that's going to be assessing your interview skills there at UTD. So how lucky are you as SWE students that you get this time with Will? So Will, take it away.
Awesome. So as you guys are going to be interviewing, one thing that you will do is virtual interviews. Obviously, everything's going to be on a virtual platform. So as we mentioned earlier, take those tips into preparing your best self in terms of understanding what platform the employer is using. If you're interviewing with AT&T, it's going to be WebEx. And so majority of all the interviews that I do for UT Dallas will be on that platform. But I'm gonna give you just one tip, one or two tips to kind of help you navigate through virtual interviews. And before you get there, I would say utilize LinkedIn. I'm sure all of you guys have a LinkedIn profile. More than ever, recruiters are looking at virtual platforms and social media. So if you have a Twitter handle or LinkedIn profile, connect with the employers as much as possible. I'm very accessible. If you look me up on LinkedIn, make those connections so that when you get in front of that employer, you have that, have something in common. Maybe you notice that I share a lot of positivity or technology articles. That's just something that you can bring up to build that rapport with that recruiter that you're interviewing with, and it goes a long way. And so one thing that I will tell you is that in a virtual interview, conduct it as if you were in person. So which means dress appropriately. There's no need to be in t-shirt and shorts. If you were going to our corporate office downtown, imagine how you want to present yourself. Just think about that, and then avoid any distracting hangings on the wall. So you might be in a dorm room with other roommates, and they might have posters that probably they may or may not be appropriate for the company you're interviewing for. Just be aware of those small things that employers can start to build an opinion about you based on how you're dressed, how prepared you are, and then any distracting hangings on walls that can give the employer maybe a negative impression about you. But we're looking forward to connecting with as many as you awesome, sweet students over this fall semester. And Sue, I'll turn it back over to you.
All right, thank you, Will. And for this go around, let's move over to the other side, and we'll start with you, Eric. What are some guides for interviewing? Some tips?
Yeah, interviewing is it's a crazy thing. And when I was interviewing, I had to like show up in person at a specific day and time. I had to wait in an office building for someone to come escort me up to a floor where I sat in a suit and like had a conversation. And y'all probably won't have to do a whole lot of that. So count your blessings. But honestly, I think the big thing is that you should prepare as much as you possibly can, but also make sure that you're as comfortable as possible. You're in a very unique situation to be able to do these virtual interviews where like I'm wearing like a nice shirt right now. I wanted to present myself well, but like I'm just wearing like sweat shorts. Like you can't see under the table. It doesn't matter. So be comfortable, because it's not like your interviewer is going to be like, can you please stand up? I'd really like to see your whole outfit. So don't worry so much about little things like that. Make sure that the environment that you're in as well is also comfortable for you. You want to take into account how you might sound. Are the acoustics in the room good, or is it something that's really going to like blow out your voice? Do you have good lighting? Are they actually going to be able to see you? Those are like little things that you might not generally consider that actually do make a little bit of a difference when you're in a virtual environment. But also make sure that the environment, the space that you're in, is something that's comfortable for you, because if you're not comfortable, it definitely reads when you're on camera, when you're giving those interview, when you're responding to the interview. So I think that would be my biggest tip, is just be comfortable. Be professional, but be comfortable.
Very good. Thank you, Eric. And let's move on to Amanda.
So Eric briefly touched on it. Be prepared as possible. So most likely a question that you're going to receive is, so what do you know about the company? And the benefit that you have as being virtual is that you can look this up ahead of time. Facts, jot those down, and maybe have that off to the side that you can reference. And that's really good, so that not only does it show that you're prepared and that you're knowledgeable on the spot, and it helps you if you get a little bit nervous and need something to reference. And that can be true for anything. Like if you there's those common interview questions. So you could always have those out to the side and maybe on a separate screen, and then highlight the key points, or jot down those stories that that really highlight your skill sets and your successes, and like maybe just bullet point those, and then you can just reference those as you're asked questions. And like being comfortable in an environment, You're going to be virtual. We know, just be aware of where the camera is. We usually look directly at the screen, but really that's not where our folks are. We have to look directly on the camera, which is either up above or, maybe it's off to the side. And so knowing where your audience is and still being able to get that face-to-face connection is really good.
Very good. Thanks, Amanda. And Susie.
Yeah, so I get super, super nervous for every interview. Like heart rate's probably 200 beats per minute. And so I find that the more prepared I am ahead of time, the more it relaxes me because there's less for me to think about. So how I prepare for any interview, virtual or not, is I kind of study myself. So it sounds stupid, but I'll look at my resume and look at, the things that I highlighted on my resume, because those are generally the things that you're proud of, or it's the story or stories that you want to tell. So just have those in the back of your mind, different situations that you can bring up in a behavioral interview question, because a lot of times these days interview questions are behavioral based, and there's a very simple format that you can follow to answer those. I'm sure you guys have heard of this, but it's the STAR format. That's the one that I generally try to go by. So you can describe the situation, the task, the actions you took, and then the overall result. And that's an easy way you can kind of fit your stories and package them up to be able to answer the question that they give you. Another thing I do, and I am so bad at this, and every time I start rambling, in the back of my head, I'm like, oh my gosh, Susie, like turn off your voice. Be concise. Answer the question they give you. Don't go off on a tangent. I mean, even right now, my mind's going 1,000 miles per minute. So just whatever the question it is, give your story, give the example you want to share, and then just shut up. Because sometimes it can get very confusing for the interviewer if you're just constantly going off about different stories, and then sometimes you're talking about something that doesn't even answer the question they asked. So that's something that I'm constantly working on. And something that helps me with that is honestly just practicing. So practice in front of a mirror, practice in front of a friend, but also don't turn interviews down. Even if you're not interested in the company or the role, just take them, because the more interviews you have under your belt, the more relaxed you'll be going into the bigger interviews that you're actually excited about.
Well said.
That is great advice, Susie. And I'll tell you guys a funny story. So I have been working for the phone company. I passed my 35-year mark this past summer. And as many of you know from my previous visits to UTD, I am actually a chemical engineer. So one wonders, how does a chemical engineer end up at AT&T? And to Susie's point, I was actually looking mainly at petroleum companies, but the telephone company was there and they had an interview sign-up sheet and nobody had signed up. It was pretty blank. So I thought, oh, nothing else. It'll be, a good practice interview. Certainly not anything I would actually do with my life. And here I am. So excellent advice, Susie, not only for the practice, but you never know where those interviews will take you. And I mention that because in preparation for the fall recruiting season, I've had a lot of one-on-one discussions with students who have reached out to me, and I found that they're very focused on, should I apply? Should I sign up for an interview? There's a lot there. They're doing a lot of screening and filtering on the front end. And my advice for them is nothing ventured, nothing gained. The perfect company for you could be one that's not even on your radar right now. So be open. To Susie's point, that's excellent advice. Always take advantage of those opportunities for an interview. And we will move on to our last slide. So we've covered a lot of this information earlier, but just to make sure we touch these bases, I am going to toss it back to Mr. Will Brown.
Sure. So, I mean, video conferencing, meeting preparation, as we all talk, as all the panelists mentioned, being prepared is really going to be the key. And, minimizing those distractions and making sure you have adequate lighting for those interviews. One thing that I would tell you that you will get asked, and this is a good note to write down, is tell me a little about yourself. So begin working on your personal brand statement. It doesn't have to be a page long, but maybe one or two sentences that gives that employer a little glimpse about who you are. And then number two is why are you interested in working for AT&T? And Amanda touched on this. Do your research, because it's great to hear that we sell cell phones, but AT&T is really more of a media, entertainment, and telecommunications company. So doing your research on the, say my profile and LinkedIn, I have a lot of articles around what AT&T is doing. Our website really helps you prepare to answer that question. It gives that employer the impression that you've really done your research, you're very interested in the company, and you will be a great fit for a long-term, long-term employee with AT&T. So that's all I would say. But I think you guys are rock stars, and you're always prepared. All the interviews that I've done with SWE have always been excellent, and so I'm glad you guys are taking this time to invest in developing yourself as we're getting right into the busiest time of recruiting season. Really hope these tips are really going to help you guys a lot. That's all I have to.
Yeah, thank you so much, Will. So with that, let's dive into Q&A. Let's start off. Any questions from the students for our panelists?
I'm just going to jump in here real quick. So I was thinking we could do this a little differently than usual with everything being virtual. So if students have any questions, feel free to raise your hand. And Sue, if you want to do this, you can. Otherwise, I can just call out names, the first one I see, basically. And the student who I call out, please feel free to, turn on your video and unmute yourself and just ask the question directly.
Yep, that sounds great. And why don't you, you can call out the students as they raise.
Perfect. All right, so we have Tamara.
Hi everybody, my name's Tamara. I'm a computer engineer majoring, I am a student majoring in computer engineering. I actually had two questions. I was looking at the leadership program you were talking about earlier, the rotational program, but I do not see the technology one on the website. I don't see a chat box, but if you could just direct more where to find that information at, I would really appreciate it. Also, I had a question directly about video interviews. So I was recently affected by the hurricane that happened near Galveston, and I was wondering, how did you feel about outside interviews? Unfortunately, it kind of conflicted with my time, so I wasn't sure how that looked to the interviewer that I was outside, but I didn't want to get into too much personal information why I was outside my house, in my backyard doing the interview, as I didn't have power inside. But how does that personally look to you, seeing a student having an interview outside their house, like clearly in the backyard or something like that?
So Tamara, this is Will. I'll give you my perspective. I am very understanding, right? If you do an interview with me, my 3-year-old might be running in the room here in a second. I have a 6-month-old. So my house is a school, a nursery. My wife works for AT&T in marketing. We're juggling between calls, and so like me, a lot of employers are understanding that students are dealing with the same environment that we are. So by no means do I hold that against you. Maybe you just let the employer know, before the interview, hey, I'm outside, or, I could not find an adequate room. I'm not going to have to count that against you. I think you overcome that by just being prepared, as we mentioned, doing your research, having your facts ready to go, being able to present yourself. But I'm totally understanding, and I would want people to be understanding whenever they hear, baby screaming in the background. So don't worry about that. And to your other question, on our website, if you go to att.jobs/college, if you click on the technology link, they'll list up our technology development program. Now the application isn't open just yet. It should be open later this month, but you can go in there and sign up for alerts to where you'll be notified via email once the position is open. And within the technology development program, there's software engineer, there's a network engineer, there's a data analyst, and a technical business manager within that technology development program. Both offers full-time and internship positions. And then you mentioned our leadership development program. That's going to be for our MBA and master's students that are pursuing an MBA or master's degree, and that's specifically for graduate students. But on an undergrad perspective for you, it's going to be our technology development program, and we'll be sure to send a direct link to that application. Thank you so much for your interest.
Thank you so much for your answer. I really appreciate it.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Do we have any other questions from students? I'm keeping an eye out for everyone and your hands.
To Tamara's comment, I just wanted to add, so to Will was right on target. Everybody is super understanding. So we recently had an ops review. So it's something that's done, it's kind of a big deal. You do them either monthly or quarterly, and they're usually done in front of the VP, me, and our officer. And one of my employees had called me in advance and said, I am going to be home, but my husband is also home and we have an infant. So like, like we're both going to be on calls at the same time. Like, what do I do if like he is speaking and I need to hold the infant while I'm, waiting to do my presentation? And I said, oh my God, I gave Will's answer. I'm like, oh my goodness, everybody is in the same boat. If you need to hold the baby while somebody else is presenting and then you hand off to your husband when it comes to your time to talk, that's fine. And it was so funny because as soon as our officer saw that she was holding a baby, he's like, oh, I have my grandchild here. And he went and got his baby, and it turned into like a baby discussion. So definitely feel very comfortable because every single one of us is in the exact same boat.
All right, thank you. I see we do have a few more hands up. I'll call on Elisa first.
Okay, hey everyone, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, so first of all, thank y'all for coming and doing this event for us. I kind of wanted to go back to a point that Eric mentioned about keeping open like channels for communication, during virtual learning. So I have that set up right now and I think it's great, but along with that comes this overwhelming burden of having 100 notifications on my phone every time I go and check my phone. So do y'all have any tips on how to kind of navigate that or feel a little less stressed? Or what do y'all do?
So if y'all don't mind me taking this, I think the big thing is like a lot of those chat tools will allow you to do things like mute channels. If you're talking about like phone notifications, I know at least for Android, you can make sure that you disable notifications for entire applications if it just becomes too much. I think it's really important not to be overwhelmed by those things. Obviously, if something's really active, it can kind of if someone sparks like a big discussion, like it can be a lot. But I would just look at different ways that within the app you can manage the notifications that you get. So like a good example for me is I use Discord to keep up with several different interact with both in and out of work. And what I do is I have it so that I only get notified when someone actually like specifically mentions me. So that way, if a conversation is happening and I'm not mentioned, then I don't get involved, and I can go back and read the conversation, right? That's the great part about having these chat engines, is that most of them have a history where you can go back and look at it. So I would definitely recommend looking at the different notification options and seeing if there's any way that you can lessen the number of notifications you get, but still have access to that chat history. And then make sure that when you do that, that you communicate with the people who you're interacting with, that if they need to get a hold of you, or if they want to get a hold of you, that they need to mention you specifically, because that's going to be the easiest way to handle it. And most people are pretty open to that, because a lot of the people in your chat rooms are probably having the same like issue with like 200 notifications, especially when there's like a really bad assignment or something that generates a lot of discussion.
Thank you, Eric. That is very helpful, especially when there's so many different platforms everyone's on.
Yep.
Moderating it like that is very useful. Next, we have Ankita.
Hello.
Hello.
So I just had a question about one-on-ones. So it's kind of different. Instead of like an interview setting, if you have like an intern or a new employee in the office, I just noticed I had my first internship this summer, and so I had a lot of one-on-ones in the beginning, especially of the summer, and I found them really awkward because I was kind of just describing my project to people who weren't necessarily involved in my project, and then asking other employees, oh, how long have you been with this company? And like, what is your background? And so I guess my question is, when you find a new intern or a new employee that's like part of your team, or maybe not even part of your team, what do you want to know about them? Or how what are successful ways to structure a one-on-one?
So you want to take that one?
Yeah, I'll offer that. One of the things that we do, because it is an issue these days because we're not in the office. And in the office, you would normally spend a lot of time doing very casual chatting. And then when it came time to talk about work, there would be a level of comfort there because you already knew the person one-on-one. So you almost have to set up times just to do the chatting. And maybe have, like, for example, a lot of newer employees at AT&T have been setting up time with me for little virtual coffee breaks, where we would normally meet at one of the AT&T coffee machines. Now, instead, we can both grab, a cup of coffee and just meet virtually for like 15, 20 minutes, no agenda, just a simple chat. So that makes it a little easier because then you find things in common and you have a nice little chat. And then when you actually have to discuss something that's business related, it's a much easier discussion.
That's a great answer. Thank you. I know it's really difficult in a virtual setting to have those smaller conversations to lead to the bigger conversations. So doing that would probably really help. I know I've been in the same situations that Ankita described earlier too. All right, our next question is coming from Ashima.
Hi, I had a quick question. So I'll be graduating in December, and I wanted to know, how does does the new grad applications work the same way if you're graduating in an off semester?
Yeah, good question. So the technology development program has January start dates. So you would, once the requisition comes open, hopefully within the next couple weeks, you can go ahead and apply now, go through the interview process, and if you are hired, you would have a job offer for a January 2021 start date within the program.
That's good. Thank you.
Good question.
All right. So I see Ankita still has her hand raised. If you're done with all your questions, you can put it back down. Okay, thank you. Anyone else have any questions for everyone?
Well, I just wanted to thank all of you for spending time with us. We really miss you. We have been with you on campus for so many years, and we wish we could be there with you in person, but this is the next best thing. And again, we will be back. The SWE section set up a wonderful session. So from 10 to 11 a.m. on September 16th, will be part of that little gathering. So if you think of other questions between now and then, know that you'll have another opportunity to meet with us.
Definitely. Thank you so much, everyone, for coming to our meeting. For UTD students, I will be putting up the sign-in sheet again. But for now, I think we will end the event. Stop recording.